Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. By now, you have either heard or seen the slap. What is more interesting is the people who are debating whether or not was it justified or was it wrong. But I want to talk about who determines what's right or wrong. And why are we confused over that? Now, before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Well, even though this to me is not a Christian issue, even though there are those now trying to make it a Christian issue, um, later, after the slap, when Will Smith was even accepting his award, I think he mentioned God and mentioned what Denzel Washington had said to him, that the devil comes from you when you're at your top. Okay, like I say, I think this is a very non-Christian issue, but what I want to explore is why that there are so many people who are willing to justify this criminal act. More on that later, but the idea of this incident here, as you can see, this is the moment right after when Will Smith walks up and he slaps Chris Rock. Now, this was in response to Chris Rock's jab at Jada, his wife, when he said, Jada, G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. Now, as you can see, he's making reference to Demi Moore shaven head in her movie G.I. Jane. But this was the response. Now, notice Will is laughing, but then you see Jada is not laughing, and moments after that, this happens, right? The slap. Now, so the question is, well, why, or what happened, right? Well, why did Will do this? Now, some people say he did it in defense of Jada. Some people say that there's history. And all of that could be true. Some people say if you even go back, that Chris Rock had been taking pot shots at the Smith and Jada in particular. This picture kind of shows going back a few years where Jada was boycotting the Oscars. I think because Will wasn't nominated, and during the same time, I believe it might have been around the Oscar So White incident. But he made this statement. Now, the person, of course, that's Rihanna on the on the end there. But and I'm going to show you why she's in this picture here. But basically, Chris said that he was talking about all those who were boycotting the Oscars, and he brought up Jada, and he basically says Jada picketing or boycotting the Oscars is like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. And then he goes on to say, I wasn't invited, and that was a shot at Jada. So it seems like there's history there, but nevertheless, what did it when he insulted? You can probably say when he insulted, it was a jab at Jada. Now, some people will say that she has alopecia, so making fun of her in this kind of medical condition was wrong. And the jury is still out as to, or I should say, both sides are arguing. Some say he knew, some say he didn't know that she had alopecia. I think either way, the joke probably was in bad taste. Now I'm going to correct myself. It was in bad taste, but it was also standard Chris Rock. And you can also say that Chris Rock seemed to have kind of take pot shots. And I understand how people can feel when people kind of single you out. I've been singled out when people would take pot shots at me. I understand that. So I got, in a sense, I understand, in a sense, why you could be not happy with someone taking pot shots at you. A pastor one time used to take pot shots at me. Um, I think he was mad because I left his church, and then it's kind of interesting that he would. So if I would, when I would come back to an event, he would make sure that he would, again, he would just take a pot shot. He would just insult me, you know. But would that justify me slapping him? Would that justify me slapping him? Now, further, the academy, how they handled this situation, after the slap, they allowed Will to sit there for the next 40 minutes, and then they actually gave him the Oscar awards. Now, news since then, of course, has now come out, because now we're over a week past the event, that they did ask Will to leave, but he refused. That was the news, but that's kind of not true. And the reason why I'm going to say that they've been the people reporting it like that are being kind of disingenuous. What Will said he wanted to make a speech, I guess. Now, what the producers were hoping that Will would do was to not only address it but also apologize to Rock. But in his tearful acceptance, he did not. He didn't mention. Really didn't even mention the slap. He kind of, in a roundabout way, he did. And basically, love makes you do crazy things. This is his tearful response to that. Now, here's what I want to deal with, because I'm listening to people talk about this whole incident. Of course, now is global news now. But I want to talk about the right and the wrong of this. I want to talk about, how do you define right and wrong? And then, as I said, I want to know, why are we confused over that? And as I said, people justify Will slapping. They justify Will slapping Chris Rock because of Chris Rock's insult. But understand, what you've seen here, first and foremost, is a criminal act. And even Will Packer, the executive producer, basically said the police were there, and they basically told him, they said, we will go and put cuffs on him and escort him out. Okay, they didn't. I think it was a cop-out that they didn't, because under any other circumstances, they would not have asked permission once you see someone commit a criminal act. This was a criminal act. But I want to go beyond this. I want to go beyond right and wrong, because many people are debating if this was justified. At the Raw, Chris Rock insulted Jada. And does that now justify the slap? So let me just say this, because if Will responded to Chris Rock's insult with violence, and by the way, he has said it was wrong too. He said violence is never acceptable. But I'm dealing with now opinions that people are saying he was right, some people saying he was wrong. But if you say that he is right, then how do you tell, and you know, the road rage incidents where people give someone the finger and they feel justified because of how they feel they were wrong? In schools all across the nations, there are fights being broken out because of what people are calling disrespect. He disrespected me. So then you start a fight. Are you going to justify that? Here's an interesting story. I'll bring this up. Now, this story, of course, has absolutely nothing to do with the Will and Jada incident. But this story here is that the lady you see to the left, and she's also in the other picture on the right. Now, what you see is the little girl right there, is basically her daughter. Now you may, well, look at this. Why is she in jail? Well, it turns out that the girl, is not her daughter. That at birth, this woman went into a hospital and actually stole her as the baby. Now I want you to see something here. Stole this little girl as a baby, an infant baby, and raised her. Now you see what age she is there. This girl loves her as her mom. And it was a heartbreaking story, especially for the daughter, because when it was found out, in her teenage years, so, 10, 15 plus years later, now she's in jail, right? The kidnapper, right? Let's call her what she is. She was the kidnapper. And other than being a kidnapper, she was a wonderful mother, the daughter will say, okay? But she did an act. She kidnapped. She did wrong. See, my point is, who determines what's right and wrong? And just because she lived a normal life after that, right? She was a loving mother. See, if you see the two pictures there, she was a loving mother. She's the kidnapper, okay? And she caused pain. I want you to see something. She caused the birth mother pain. The birth father pain. In my opinion, and a confused daughter. Because that girl still says she's still my mother but that's the only mother she has known. Who is right and wrong? And here's my question. Who determines what is right and what is wrong? Who determines that? See? How do you determine? For example, if you say, how do you determine thou shalt not steal? I just showed you the kidnapping. She stole a baby. But how do you determine that that's wrong? And we start with God. God determines what is right and what is wrong. You start with that. You start with God setting the terms of justice. And then he passes that on. He commands us, man, to love one another. He commands us, for example, not to steal. Why? Why is stealing wrong? Because now, when we look at this circumstances, we're confused now. Who's right and who's wrong in there? Did Chris Rock deserve to be slapped because he told a joke? Was Will justified in defending his wife? Now some would even argue he didn't slap the stew out of the adulterous affair, the guy Jada was having adultery with. And my point to this is that when it comes to man and his values system is screwed up. It's wicked. It's hypocritical. It's sinful. God is the one who says stealing is wrong, for example. Violence is wrong. And the reason why is because you start with God's value of humanity, God's value of his creation. You start with that. You start with God saying, I value man. And then he tells us, you value one another as I value you. So now, if this woman, who according to the daughter was a loving mom, but she was a lie because she hurt that little girl, robbed her of her true mother. She stole. This, you harmed your fellow man. You harmed your fellow man. Right? Violated one of the 10 commandments, several of the 10 commandments. You did violent, but you didn't value whom God valued. Now, putting this in the Christian sense, as I said before, this is not a Christian thing, but I'm going to put a Christian principle to it, because there are people who are now trying to say, and they are confused, to me, of what is right and what is wrong. Chris was wrong because he, for whatever reasons within his heart, insulted Jada, but he didn't deserve a slap. Now people are blaming Jada for inciting Will. I think that's unjust. I don't know if you can do that properly. And Will certainly was wrong because he slapped and committed a criminal act. He was wrong. And we shouldn't be confused over that. We shouldn't be confused what is right and what is wrong. All right, guys, that is my perspective. Love to hear your opinions and your views. Add them to the comments section, and remember, all comments are welcome. And don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. Until next time, I'll see you then.